Look closely at these two plants. On the left is the standard garden variety, struggling to survive despite being fed expensive synthetic nutrients. On the right is a towering, 12-foot-tall behemoth, its fruit so heavy it threatens to snap the vine. You might think this is the result of some secret lab-grown chemical or a specialized genetic modification, but the truth is far simpler and much older. Between the soil and the sky, there is a hidden bridge made of nothing more than a single strand of copper wire. What if I told you that the very air circulating around you right now is actually the most powerful fertilizer on Earth? While you are emptying your wallet for bags of industrial chemicals, a growing global community of survivalists is tapping into a forgotten atmospheric energy that was nearly erased from history back in the 1920s. This isn't just gardening. It is a direct defiance of a system that thrives on your dependency. Right now, your neighbors might already be harnessing this forbidden growth to triple their food supply for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. You are the only one left behind, still trapped in a subscription model for your own survival. This ancient method, once buried by corporate interests, is finally resurfacing in the backyards of those who refuse to be controlled. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the simple wire that defies big agriculture and unlocks the true power of the living earth. To understand why we need this copper bridge, we first have to confront the uncomfortable reality of what has been done to our land over the last century. We are living through a period of controlled starvation, though it doesn't look like the famines of the past. Today, our grocery store shelves are overflowing with vibrant, colorful produce that is essentially hollow. We have traded nutritional density for shelf stability and visual appeal. This crisis began when industrial agriculture shifted its focus from the health of the soil to the chemistry of the crop. Modern synthetic fertilizers are effectively high-octane drugs for plants. They provide a quick burst of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, forcing the plant to grow at an unnatural rate, but they do so by bypassing the soil's natural immune system. In nature, soil is a living, breathing organism with its own complex magnetic resonance and electrical frequency. When we drench it in salt-based chemicals, we essentially short-circuit that life force. We are keeping our food on a form of chemical life support. The result is a sterile environment where the minerals that should be in our bodies remain locked in the earth, inaccessible to the plants we consume. This is why you can eat a full meal today and still feel a deep, nagging hunger. Your cells are screaming for the micronutrients that no longer exist in industrial dirt. Furthermore, this system is designed to keep you broke. As the soil becomes more addicted to these synthetic inputs, it requires more of them every single year just to maintain the same meager yield. You are paying a premium for food that is literally making you weaker and more dependent on a fragile supply chain. The rising cost of groceries isn't just a result of inflation. It is the price of a dying ecosystem. By stripping the earth of its natural energetic charge, we have become slaves to the laboratory. But there is a way to wake up the soil and reclaim the vitality that was stolen from us. It is time to look back at the past. The year was 1925, a time when the world stood at a crossroads between the natural wisdom of the past and the emerging industrial machine of the future. In the French countryside, an inventor named Justin Christofleau was busy perfecting a device that would eventually terrify the world's most powerful chemical giants. He called it the electrocultivator. Unlike the expensive, laboratory-brewed nitrates that were beginning to flood the market, Christofleau's invention required no fuel, no poison, and no recurring cost. It was a simple, elegant antenna designed to capture the dormant power of the atmosphere and funnel it directly into the ground. The results of his experiments were nothing short of miraculous. Imagine oat stalks growing 3 meters tall, clover reaching heights that obscured the livestock grazing upon it, and potato plants producing yields that defied every known law of traditional botany. Most incredibly, these crops were grown in soil that had been deemed exhausted and barren. Christofleau wasn't just growing food. He was proving that the earth itself could be recharged like a battery. He demonstrated that by aligning his antennas to the magnetic poles and utilizing the conductivity of copper and zinc, he could stimulate the cellular growth of plants through the invisible currents of the air. But as his success grew, so did the target on his back. The nascent chemical fertilizer industry realized that if every farmer could grow record-breaking harvests using a simple metal pole, their business model would vanish overnight. Christoflo was met with a relentless campaign of character assassination. He was dragged into courtrooms, labeled a fraud by state-sponsored scientists, and eventually his patents were suppressed. When he died under mysterious circumstances, his blueprints and findings seemed to evaporate into the fog of history. The books were closed, and the world was told that chemical salts were the only way to feed a growing population. Ask yourself this: if a method existed that could eliminate the need for expensive fertilizers while doubling or even tripling the size of your vegetables, why have you never heard his name in a biology textbook? Why is the history of our food supply taught as a linear progression of chemical breakthroughs rather than a series of suppressed energetic discoveries? The ghost of Justin Christoflo haunts every struggling modern garden, a silent reminder of a path not taken. To understand how he achieved these results, we must first understand the invisible world that surrounds us. A world of ions, antennas, and the electrical heartbeat of the planet itself. This fundamental energy is always present, hovering just out of reach of our five senses, waiting for someone to build the right bridge. That bridge is precisely what we reveal. To understand how a single wire can change the biology of a plant, we have to look at the Earth as what it truly is: a giant self-sustaining battery. Most people view the atmosphere as empty space, but it is actually a dense sea of electrical potential. At any given moment, there is a massive voltage difference between the ground beneath your feet and the sky above your head. The Earth's surface carries a negative charge, while the ionosphere pulses with a positive charge. This creates a constant flow of ions, but under normal circumstances, most of that energy remains untapped by the average garden. This is where the science of the invisible becomes your greatest survival tool. By placing a high-conductivity metal like copper into the soil and extending it toward the sky, you are creating a localized bridge for this atmospheric electricity. Think of it as a lightning rod for growth. Copper is more than just a metal. It is a thermal and electrical conduit that acts as a physical shortcut for the ions that plants crave. When you wrap that copper into a specific spiral or mount it on a pole, you are effectively tuning your garden to the frequency of the Earth. Contrast this with the way mainstream science views a plant. To the industrial complex, a plant is a mechanical object. You put in a unit of nitrogen and you get a unit of growth. It is a sterile, linear transaction. But a bioelectric plant is a dynamic living battery. When it is plugged into the atmospheric current via a copper antenna, the cellular metabolism shifts. The electrical stimulation increases the rate of nutrient uptake, allowing the plant to draw minerals from the soil that would otherwise remain dormant. It is like upgrading the plant's internal wiring. But the magic does not stop at the roots. This electrical field also interacts with the water molecules in the soil. Through a process of magnetic resonance, the copper wire helps structure the water, aligning the molecules so they are more easily absorbed by the plant's vascular system. Magnetism makes the water more fluid at a molecular level, meaning the plant spends less energy searching for hydration and more energy building fruit and leaves. This is why electrocultured plants look so much more vibrant than their chemically fed counterparts. They are not just surviving on a drip feed of salt, they are thriving on a high-voltage stream of pure energy. This invisible exchange of ions creates a feedback loop of health that extends from the atmosphere into the microbial life of the soil, turning your backyard into a power station of food production. When the copper conducts positive ions downward, they encounter the negative ions inherent in the earth. This meeting is a microbiological explosion. The bacteria and fungi are electrically sensitive, and this current stimulates them to break down organic matter exponentially faster. You are giving the soil's digestive system a jumpstart. Once you understand physics, results transform. Imagine standing in a garden where the laws of nature seem to have been rewritten. While the average gardener is content with a few baskets of produce, the electroculture practitioner is dealing with what can only be described as a biomass explosion. We are talking about documented yields that often reach 300% higher than traditional methods. This isn't just about quantity. It is about the sheer resilience of the life you are cultivating. When a plant is plugged into the atmospheric current, it develops what we call a fully charged electrical immune system. Most people do not realize that pests like aphids, slugs, and beetles are actually attracted to the low-frequency vibrations of a weak, chemically dependent plant. They are nature's cleanup crew, designed to consume the sickly. But an electrocultured plant vibrates at a much higher frequency. It creates a subtle electromagnetic field that acts as a natural deterrent. Imagine never having to buy another bottle of toxic pesticide again because your plants are literally too vibrant for the bugs to handle. They sense the strength of the specimen and move on to the weaker, chemically laden garden next door. But the benefits go beyond just keeping the bugs away. One of the most terrifying moments for any survival gardener is the sudden late spring frost. You have spent weeks nurturing your seedlings, only to have a single cold night wipe out your entire food supply. This is where the forbidden science truly shines. Because of the increased mineral concentration and the stimulated sap flow within the conductive copper environment, these plants possess a much lower freezing point. While your neighbors are outside at midnight desperately covering their rows with plastic sheets and blankets, your copper-wired garden remains calm. Your crops can withstand temperatures that would turn a store-bought hybrid into black mush. You are essentially building a garden that is immune to the volatility of the changing climate. This level of security is something Big AG cannot sell you in a bag. It is a level of independence that feels almost like cheating, yet it is simply the natural byproduct of returning to a bioelectric baseline. When you see a tomato plant that continues to produce deep into the autumn, long after every other garden in the county has withered and died, you begin to realize that the limitations we have been taught are entirely artificial. You are witnessing the true potential of the earth, unlocked by a simple spiral of wire. This is the ultimate survival insurance policy, ensuring that no matter what the weather or the supply chain does, your plate remains full. The world is changing, but your ability to thrive is firmly grounded. The question that naturally arises after seeing such transformative results is a simple one. If this actually works, why isn't it the global standard? The answer has nothing to do with science and everything to do with the cold, hard logic of the balance sheet. We live in an era where the main goal of industrial agriculture is not to nourish people, but to create a permanent, inescapable dependency. To the giants of the agricultural world, a self-sufficient person is a lost customer. You have to understand that these corporations operate on a patent-based business model. They spend billions developing seeds that only respond to specific chemical formulas, and they spend millions more lobbying to ensure those chemicals remain the only legal or scientifically recognized path to farming. But here is the problem they cannot solve. You cannot patent the atmosphere. You cannot put a copyright on the magnetic field of the earth, and you certainly cannot claim ownership over a scrap piece of copper wire you found in your garage. If the average family can triple their food supply using a $5 roll of wire and a few minutes of labor, the entire multi-billion-dollar fertilizer and pharmaceutical industries would begin to collapse under their own weight. There is no recurring revenue in a solution that lasts forever. They want you on a subscription model for your very survival. They want you buying the seeds, then buying the fertilizer to make those seeds grow, then buying the pesticides to protect those weak plants, and finally buying the medicine to treat the illnesses caused by the lack of nutrition in that very food. By suppressing the knowledge of electroculture, they ensure that you remain a tenant on your own land, forever paying rent to the masters of the laboratory. It is a system of us versus them, where they benefit from your struggle and your lack of knowledge. When you step outside of this prescribed cycle, you become a threat to the status quo. You are no longer a consumer. You are a producer who is entirely off the grid of their control. This is why the mainstream media and state-funded universities will continue to label these methods as pseudoscience or fringe theories. They aren't protecting you from bad science. They are protecting their profit margins from an informed and independent populace. Embracing this forbidden knowledge is the ultimate act of rebellion. It is a way to reclaim your sovereignty and ensure that your family's well-being is never again subject to the whims of a corporate board of directors. Now that you understand why they kept this from you, it is time to take the power back into your own hands right now. Now that you understand the motive behind the silence, the only thing standing between you and a self-sustaining food forest is the physical application of these principles. You don't need an engineering degree to build these bridges. You only need a basic understanding of how energy moves. The first rule of the guerrilla gardener is to always use solid, bare copper wire. Avoid the plastic-coated or insulated versions found in most hardware stores. as the insulation acts as a barrier that prevents the wire from interacting with the ions in the air. We want the metal to breathe. For those of you starting small with container gardens or indoor pots, the Lakhovsky coil is your entry point. This is essentially a simple open-loop ring made of copper that surrounds the base of your plant. The secret is in the spiral. By leaving a small gap between the two ends of the wire, usually about an inch, you create a resonant circuit that captures high-frequency cosmic waves. When you place this coil around a seedling, you are essentially creating a protective energetic halo that speeds up cellular division. If you are looking to transform an entire outdoor garden bed, you must graduate to the atmospheric pole, often referred to as the Christoflo method. Find a wooden stake or a bamboo pole about 6 to 8 feet in height. You will then take your solid copper wire and begin wrapping it around the pole in a clockwise direction, moving from the bottom toward the sky. This spiral acts as a vortex, drawing energy down from the atmosphere and into the soil. At the very top, leave a few inches of wire exposed, pointed upward like a needle to catch the passing ions. For maximum effectiveness, you must orient your garden beds and your antennas toward magnetic north. This aligns your local electrical field with the natural ley lines of the planet, ensuring a frictionless flow of energy. Once the pole is planted firmly in the center of your bed, you can run lateral wires underground, connecting several plants to the main antenna. As you bury these wires just a few inches beneath the surface, you are literally plumbing your garden for electricity. The moment that copper touches the earth, the countdown to your harvest begins. This isn't a project for next season or a theory to ponder. It is a blueprint for immediate action. By the time the sun sets today, you could have your first antenna standing guard over your food supply, silently pulling free energy from the sky while the rest of the world remains tethered to a failing system. Build your bridge now, witness growth tomorrow, finally break free. The moment you mention electroculture in polite society, the self-appointed gatekeepers of truth will emerge from the shadows. You will be told by mainstream experts and corporate-funded fact-checkers that this is nothing more than pseudoscience or a charming 19th century myth. They will point to studies conducted in sterile laboratories to prove that a simple copper wire has no measurable impact on plant biology. Often, these studies are funded by the very fertilizer companies we have discussed. But you must ask yourself, whose truth are they protecting? These experts are trained to look at the world through a keyhole, ignoring any evidence that cannot be monetized or controlled. They will call you crazy, and they will mock your antenna garden right up until the moment they see the size of your harvest. This is why we, the underground gardeners, do not rely on permission from the ivory towers. We rely on the raw, undeniable evidence of our own backyards. I encourage you to stop arguing with the skeptics and start conducting your own tests. Plant 2 identical rows of tomatoes. Leave one to the mercy of the traditional chemical life support system. In the other, install your copper spirals and align them to the north. When you see the difference in stalk thickness, leaf color, and fruit weight, the debate ends. You do not need a paper when you have a 12-foot vine. The evidence is growing even if the experts refuse to look. Let them keep their theories. We thrive. This movement is growing in the shadows, far beyond the reach of corporate oversight. In the arid high deserts of Nevada, a homesteader recently transformed a patch of cracked sun-baked earth into a lush oasis using nothing but recycled copper tubing and the Christoflo method. Before the wires went in, not even the local weeds would grow. Today, he harvests watermelons that weigh 40 pounds each. Across the Atlantic, a survivalist collective in the damp English countryside reported that their electrocultured potatoes remained untouched by blight, while every neighboring farm lost their entire crop to the rot. These are not isolated flukes. They are data points in a global greening effort that proves we can thrive in hostile environments. From scorched plains to small suburban backyards, people are reclaiming their autonomy. The copper wire is no longer just a tool. It is a global testament to our collective survival. The time for observation has passed, and the hour for action has arrived. You now hold the keys to a forbidden legacy that can shatter your dependence on a fragile and manipulative food system. Every copper spiral you plant is a small but powerful act of defiance against those who want you weak and hungry. This knowledge is dangerous to the status quo, and there is no guarantee this information will remain accessible for long. Do not let this opportunity vanish into the digital ether. Share this video with those you trust and comment "I am ready" below to signal your commitment to the food independence movement. The next food shortage is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. When the shelves go empty, will your garden be ready to provide?